Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Calling All Devs, our Q&A series where we take questions from you, the Star Citizen community, and pose them directly to our developers. Now, this month, we are talking PvP, player versus player. There are folks who want it. There are folks who want to desperately avoid it. We're going to talk about the opportunities for both of them and how they're going to coexist in a unified, persistent universe. And so, of course, we are starting with our very own Mr. Todd Pappy. Todd, how you doing?
Hi, buddy.
Good.
Good.
You ready to talk about PvP?
I am.
All right.
I am.
Let's start at we all know how it works now. You know, the Star Citizens, they've played it. We don't need to talk about how it works now. Let's talk about the future of PvP. Where is Star Citizen PvP going?
Okay. So I think from that standpoint, you have to think about how different solar systems are connected to each other. So, and obviously, Stanton is a somewhat lawful system. It's got UEE versus Pyro is supposed to be a very unlawful system, or lawless system. And then, so where players want to be able to find the PvP versus where players don't want to find it, you know, they want to focus more on PvE. I would start there. So they start at, you know, what system should I be in? What system, you know, do I want to go to? And
if I'm in Terra, I probably should feel pretty safe. If I'm in Pyro, correct, I should be looking over my shoulder.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and you know, with that, it basically comes down to, we'll never be able to 100%, you know, guarantee, you know, hey, you're 100% safe. And frankly, we don't want to do that. And I would put it more on the scale of, let's say, 90 to 10, or, you know, and maybe in a lawless area, it's you know, the complete opposite. It's 10 to 90 kind of thing. So we never want it to be a 0. We never want it to be 100%. So, but even then in Stanton, you know, we still want there to be areas for people to look for PvP. We still want there to be areas that are, you know, mostly geared toward PvE. So it will really just depend on kind of how the player goes about looking for them, and then, you know, are you turning off the monitored zones? Are you know, basically out in the middle of nowhere? So, and if so, then yeah, then I think it should happen there. Then we also obviously have like abandoned space stations and Jumptown and these
Correa, the hotspots.
Exactly. So we have certain hotspots, you know, within the system that I still think they're 100% valid, and that people should be able to go there and try that out.
It serves a double purpose. It attracts the people looking for it to those places, and it lets the people who want to avoid it avoid those places.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and ideally in the star map in the future, where you kind of see where like hotspots of, you know, of activity, and then that kind of can gear your, or at that point in time you can choose your route, you know, with that information. So in the past, I know that we've talked about like a PvP slider, and we're not going to have anything that's player facing, but, you know, obviously for us as developers, we still want to be able to tune, you know, how much, if the players are gearing more towards PvP, you know, based off their actions, then that's more of the content that we would be pushing towards them, you know, whether those be bounties or assassination missions or those types of things.
Okay.
But if the players are not geared towards that, then, you know, that to me is basically their choices matter, you know, in kind of the content that we're providing towards them and pushing, you know, towards them. So, and then as far as, you know, even just how the fights play out. So let's say you and I are fighting PvP, and let's say I have a warrant, you know, for my arrest because I've been a bad boy, and you killed me, you know, so therefore the reward that you're getting, you know, for taking me out should be higher because you're going up against another player. Then you'll be able to, when physical inventory comes in, then anything that I'm carrying with me, you'll be able to take, you know, and it might be in damage, or it might be in disrepair, or other things happen, you know, during the fight, but it'll be up to you to choose if you want to take it or not. And so that gives the players, different ways to collect rewards or basically loot, the bodies or the ships, based off of that action.
Okay. I imagine physicalized inventory is probably going to play a bigger role in choosing your loadouts and such too. At
Yes.
least for the not for the ship version, but for the FPS version, when you can only
For both.
what you take with you, as Yoda would say. I imagine
Yeah.
that's going to become pretty important.
Yeah, and I think that will be somewhat of a game changer as far as this is a new way of playing, because basically taking that global inventory out of play, when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have any food or you don't have any ammo or you don't have any of this stuff, like you need to basically prepare for the worst and always be thinking about, okay, what's the situation I'm going to be going into? Do I have the right equipment for it? And if the answer is no, then you might die, or you have a higher likelihood of dying.
Gotcha. So if I'm understanding correctly, I'm just going to wrap you up here. Make sure I got it. For folks who are looking for PvP opportunities, there will be holistic solutions, places like Pyro, places like Jump Point, places like Korea, places that encourage and draw that activity to it. For people
Yes.
who want to avoid it, there will be lawful systems like Terra and Stanton, it's like that, where they won't be 100% protected from it, but it will be highly discouraged, and they should be able to play most of their play experience, free from potential molestation from other players. Physicalized inventory is going to be have a big effect by providing rewards for people who come after who will come after you for PvP, and then limiting, forcing you to choose what you take with you.
Exactly.
From a strategic standpoint.
And then the green and basically the green zones. So like we will be adjusting the way that the green zones work and making them more law-based. So, if you do act up in the city, then there's turrets that are there or security comes after you. So, there's other aspects like that will come into play.
So there will always be the potential for PvP in these safe places. It's just the folks who want it will have to really work for it. In those lawful places, like in the heart of the empire.
Correct.
And stuff.
Correct. Yeah, and I think with that, it's again, I like there being tension within the game. It could be very low, tension, but I still want there to be that tension,
right,
there. So something could pop off, and then you have to deal with, the circumstances at that time. So, that's.
And then the PvP slider is an internal tool instead of a forward-facing tool for the players. Used to determine what type of missions and everything that are available to it. It's almost seems like a reputation meter, sort of like if you get higher PvP reputation, we provide you more PvP opportunities, and if you have a lower PvP reputation, then we provide you more PvE opportunities.
Correct.
Cool. All right, I think we're going to call Rich Tyler, talk about the inventory stuff, because I think there's more to learn there. Todd, thank you so much for taking the time to be here on Calling All Devs. Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
All right, thank you so much, Todd. Now we're moving on to our Combat Pillar Director, Mr. Richard Tyler. We're going to talk to him about inventory. Hey, Richard, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. We're talking PvP today. So, we're talking PvP, and this may seem like a weird slot in there, but physicalized inventory, external inventory, being able to only have that which you take with you. Talk to us about where we're at with that current development.
So physical inventory, well, first thing I want to say about physical inventory is how it ties into the core combat gameplay loop and why it exists and why we're doing it. And, because obviously some people think, well, what? Inventory? Like, how does that tie into combat, right? That doesn't kind of make logical sense. So first off, from a high level point of view, you've got to think about what is the core gameplay loop for Star Citizen in terms of the FPS combat loop. And the FPS combat loop it starts way before you even get into combat. And that is, what equipment do I have? What guns do I have? What resistances am I going to come up against? What environment am I going to be in? And this also ties into things like actor status and other things, and and food and drink. So At the moment, when you're in Star Citizen, essentially you can open your mobiGlas and you can change your equipment at the drop of a hat. You can have 1,000 med pens in there, and you can heal indefinitely. But as you can see with the food and drink system that we've added, and the actor status in terms of the environmental actor status, in terms of hypothermia effects and hyperthermia effects, you can start to see kind of the direction that we're heading in. And the reason that is that before you get into that combat scenario, you need to be thinking ahead and going, okay, what kind of environment, what kind of situations do I think that I'm going to encounter? So, am I going to need a long range weapon? Am I going to need a short range weapon? Well, I'm going to need ammunition for those weapons. Should I pick ballistics versus energy? Because eventually energy will replenish as it does in the ships. And in terms of armor, am I going to go to a harsh environment? Am I going to need to worry about extreme temperature? Am I going to need to worry about heavy armor versus light armor? Because eventually, with medium and heavy armor, you're not going to be able to fly a ship. You'll have to stow those away. So, and then it's like, well, am I going to need to be in combat as soon as I get out of the ship? So there's all these different things, and then you've got to think of things like, I'm going to be hungry, or am I going to be thirsty, and what type of foods am I going to take, and what type of drinks am I going to take, in terms of, do I want stamina regeneration buff, or do I want certain types of buffs to play into that combat? And all of that, and that doesn't even include things like gadgets and throwables. And when you take all of those things that you actually think, okay, I actually use a lot of those things in combat in terms of how my actor status is playing. I don't want to turn up weakened, I want to be at peak condition, in terms of the environment's going to affect me, and so on and so forth. When you don't have that at the drop of the hat, that is a game changer. That fundamentally changes how you approach leaving the beautiful metropolises of the landing zones and all of the nice and happy furry areas that you can stay in,
and the
going
safety
to
of your
these
ship
harsh
and stuff,
environments. Exactly. And at that point you have to go, well, okay, I've got a limited space. I can't just take 1,000 med pens anymore. I can only take 5 or 6. Maybe I have to store some in my backpack, and I have to take some food, and got to take ammo, and I'm going to need oxygen, and all of a sudden you're starting to think of, well, I can't take, and it's like you're going on holiday, right? You might be going for 2 weeks, and you can't be like, well, is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? You have to limit what you can take. And so you have to really think about those situations that you're going to be in. So once you get into combat, all of the previous decisions that you've made are going to influence how that combat plays out. And that's why when you take the whole of the core gameplay loop, there is a beginning in terms of the preparation, in terms of how you set up. And, there's that preparation also bleeds up into, you might be scouting a particular area that you've seen, and there's enemy AI, and, you're using a gadget to kind of map out where they are. You're looking with binoculars or your scope, you're tagging enemies and tagging them onto the FPS radar and scanning. You're scanning particular things. Maybe there's a bounty down there that you want to get. And, and all of that ties into your preparation phase. Then obviously the combat phase, in terms of, you engaging your plan, reacting to what happens, how that pans out. And then there is also a post-combat phase, which completes the loop. And that post-combat phase is, the looting mechanics, in terms of, okay, what can I take? And, if you're full to the brim with hey, I just filled my backpack, well, you're not going to be able to just carry everything out. And you might be like, oh, well, actually, I'm going to drag this guy back to my ship. Or, maybe I want to take someone alive. And so when you talk about the full combat loop, you can see that whole premise of how just physical inventory by itself becomes a huge game changer. So physical inventory by a feature in itself, we've kind of slowly started to add it every patch. So we started with the commodity inventory with FPS mining, in terms of having a backpack and storing commodities in there. And that was always going to be a temporary solution because it's to support mining. You can see now with the personal inner thought that, we have the wheel, and you can see where you're mining, and that is actually going to be changed to what we're calling now as the external inventory. And it was never the intention that it was always going to be a wheel. It was actually going to go to a grid system now. But it won't be just a grid system like you're having to manage everything in the grid, or you're playing Tetris or anything like that. It's actually a really innovative system where it's almost like a list, but it almost think of it like when you're moving an app on an iPhone.
Right.
how it
It
how it
automatically
melds
readjusts
around
everything.
that. Yeah. And so what that gives us, it gives us an overview of your character, an overview of all of the items that you're going to have, and you're going to be able to directly interface with your character and the items that you have, and vice versa. You'll be able to directly interface with external inventory. So, for example, other players' backpacks on the ground, or crates, or cargo, or whatever, anything that doesn't have necessarily a physical representation in the world. It might have a physical volume represented in the game, but those things aren't necessarily inside of it. So that what I just described there is kind of like the end goal, and that's when we have item persistence and iCache comes online. But the first kind of next step is to kind of interact that external inventory, that UI interface, which will be an extension of the personal inner thoughts as it is now. You can still just press I and open the inventory. And you will have the grid-based system, and it'll still be just commodities at the beginning. So that means that food and drink or minables, the things that you can currently put in your backpack, you'll be able to still put in your backpack. But it means that when we have, like, say, be able to interact with the cargo hold and be like, hey, I can put things directly in there or take FPS minables out of there. And that'll be kind of like the next iteration. And you can see that we're slowly but surely moving towards that. And eventually that then will become full items can be able to go in there. And then you'll have your character in the middle that you'll be able to switch around, take items directly off your character into the interface and back and forth. And so that kind of gives you kind of what physical inventory is on the character level and external inventory on the UI. But that is such a wide-ranging thing, because as soon as you say you can't carry everything, you need the physicalized storage on ships, you need it in habs, your hangar. So yeah, I mean, when we get to there, and we will get to there, it will be an incredible moment, because the tech and the iCache and the item persistency will be online, and we will have a very different game than we have today.
Absolutely. Who would have thought you could talk for 7 minutes about inventory and its importance to PvP? And that was I'm willing to bet that was the short version.
That was the short version.
That was the short version.
But to be honest, Jared, what I'm actually going to say is, you can't talk to me about PvP without talking to me about Theatres of War.
Fair enough. You want to call Sean in on the? You want to add Sean to the call and just
absolutely
let's chat.
Let's get him
in.
in.
All right, let's do it. Sean, how you doing? Welcome to Calling All Devs.
Thanks.
All right, we are talking Theatres of War. We're talking POP, PvP, PvP, and Theatres of War. Give us the top level. How are we doing? How's it doing?
Well, technically, it's not just PvP, by the way. It's kind of PvP VE a little bit, just because we've got some AI ships going on in there. But yeah, mostly PvP between it. It's been going really well. Super excited to have gotten it out for 2 large weekend tests with the Avocati. And it was really important for us to be able to do this. And I wish we could have done it even sooner than we did. But we had a lot of work to do right after CitizenCon. And this might be rehashing some of the stuff, but we had to update to Planet V4. We had to consume some of the physics refactors, and we had to coexist within a certain stream. So just took a little bit of time to keep everything running.
And how's it going now? We've had 2 tests. You just did an AMA on Spectrum. What's next for Theatres of War? What's the path forward look like?
Well, yeah, sort of first, I guess, how it all went, which is what you were asking in the first place there. But it did go quite well. The first test was a little bit rough in terms of performance, and we all recognized that right out of the gate. We didn't recognize quite how bad that would get, and that really comes down to we've only got a certain set of team, and then the development group, which is all of CIG, and then Avocati. So it's like this slow scaling that we've been doing, and I've been treating this very, very specifically, so that every time we do scale, we can actually take action on the things that come up during that scaling, because always things come up, and it's a lot broader than just the game as well. Some of the big things that we had to work on anyways were to do with matchmaking, to do with party join, to do with squads, those kind of things. So The first avocado test, yeah, definitely had some performance problems. We spent a whole sprint focused on it. It was like, I think 80% of the changes, it was something like, 170, 180 changes that came in from not just the Theaters of War group or the Arena Commander group, but the rest of the company as well. And all of these things ended up benefiting the PU. So um, when everybody's going to be getting together within the PU, whether that's these 20 on 20 battles or full 50 players, you actually see that the performance is dramatically improved because of all the things that we've actually done. And in some cases, we might have gone a little too far trying to optimize, the art against some of the game code. Uh, all of these things really are the bits that we learned while we were doing it. So one of the big things that we saw was, server performance was great. That was running at a solid frame rate. Really had no hitches as far as the server was concerned. But when we scaled up our concurrency to about 5 times what we had tried previously, we had some things going on with the matchmaker. So we had to take care of that. A lot of that came down to party joins and some of the logic that would go on within there. Because, as everyone might be aware, we utilize all the Arena Commander, Star Marine, infrastructure and matchmaker. So a lot of it is either updating that, fixing things that have rotted, or making it more fit for purpose as we're going through. One of the other things that we spent a lot of time was putting analytics in, so that when we did do these tests, it wasn't just a matter of getting sort of anecdotal feedback. There's very hard data for us to make some decisions on, and some of the things that come out of it are pretty interesting. And I kind of jokingly sent an update through, I think to Bayor, and he put it online, which was that the fire extinguisher got a kill, and we're going, okay, where is that fire extinguisher?
I didn't even know there was a fire extinguisher in the level.
Well, there is in Star Marine levels, and they explode, but this wasn't how somebody got a kill. This was a physical impact thing that happened with that. So happens a chair, just to add to the mystery, a chair got 2 kills. This was a Valkyrie chair, got 2 kills. So if you didn't get 2 kills during the avocado test, you are worse than a chair. It's good info.
I think one of the also the fundamental difference as well to cover where we want to go next is, if you look at theaters as a breakdown of the gameplay systems from the PU in terms of the FPS action, the combat action, and all of those things like put into one big pot, we got some incredible feedback from the community in terms of how the handling, the character feeling, is the objective right in terms of the balance, the layout of the map. And we sat down and we read through all of that feedback. We broke it down, and we got some gold dust from that feedback. And we've created a plan for the next test of Theaters of War, and I think you'll find that when we come to it next, it's going to play dramatically different. I think it will feel more Star Citizen in the best of way, and I think that's something that I think with theaters when we started out, it's you can say like with Arena Commander and Star Marine when they started out, they're kind of very distilled experiences themselves. And when you think of Theaters of War, what we took to CitizenCon, we're still kind of putting those together, and we were kind of learning, how they best fit together. And these last 2 tests have really given us some more information, both from a quantitative point of view in terms of the analytics that we got back, and we had a lot of analytics in there, and from a qualitative point of view in terms of speaking to the guys, reading the discords, having a look on Reddit, having a look in our own forums. We got a lot of internal feedback because we were playing. Literally, the whole company was playing that Theaters of War literally like every day for a good 2 months before we went live, and to try and get how did it play, and to make sure that we were playing it and getting feedback. So we got a lot of that done, and I think the next version is going to feel more responsive. It will have a lot of the things that make Star Citizen unique and great, and it will definitely feel like more of a Star Citizen game mode, and that is something that we're really endeavoring to push for. So I think it's an incredible opportunity for us to push on that, and that's why really that we haven't just gone, hey, Evocati, thanks for that, let's improve performance, push it to BTU, push it live, because we want to get it right. And that's why we're utilizing these testing slots to give us that information.
It sounds like
100%.
a great example of how the process is supposed to work. It's you
Yeah.
develop small, you do internal testing, then you push it out to the wider group, you get the feedback,
And
you bring it back
you
in, then you
don't
push.
go further until such a time that you're actually prepared for that, and that comes down to everything again: performance, gameplay, and the balance.
And for those wondering, how do I become a member of Evocati? It's the Issue Council. Submit your bugs, submit your reports, validate the reports of other people. Participation in the Evocati means citizenship. I was trying to do the Starship Troopers thing and I missed it. Anyway, Sean, Richard, thank you so much. Of course, this won't be the last time we're talking Theaters of War before all is said and done. So I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Well, that's it for this month's PvP-focused episode of Calling All Devs. I want to thank Todd Pappy, Richard Tyrer, and Sean Tracy for taking the time to be here on the show with us this week. Remember that you can submit your questions for consideration for every episode of Calling All Devs up in the thread, up on Spectrum. There should be a new thread going up shortly if it's not up already when you see this. So for Calling All Devs, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next month.